What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here with FantasyPros, giving you my players to cut in week 2. But before we get started, be sure to like this video and subscribe to FantasyPros. And if you want a chance to win a signed Tyreek Hill Miami Dolphins jersey, courtesy of bettingpros.com, your place to start betting smarter and not harder, you need to subscribe to the FantasyPros YouTube channel right now. Comment below on this video, and that's it. We'll be announcing the winner right here on the channel, so make sure you turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and claim your prize. Now let's go ahead and dive right in. We'll start off with players to cut in deep leagues of 12 teams or more. First up, Russell Wilson. It is week 2, and I am already underwhelmed with Russell Wilson. The week 1 matchup with Las Vegas was literally a softball tossed right at him for him to knock out the park. Vegas just doesn't have a good defense. Not against the pass, not against the run, nothing. It was set up so well for Russ to have a strong bounce back season. Instead, we got 15 fantasy points at QB 16 finish on the week. Some fantasy managers might look at this and say, okay, he's a fine QB2. That's all right. They're getting used to a new system. But when you have young quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson providing immediate top 5 upside performance, Jordan Love doing the same without his primary weapon, and even Sam Howell came out and gave us more than Russ, I just can't find any excuse for it. This was a strong matchup, and if this is what we can expect from Russ in a good situation, I'm scared to see what we get this week against a strong Washington defense. I think it's time for us to accept that Russell Wilson's rushing upside is long gone, and what we have left is a low-volume pocket passer that simply struggles to produce QB1 numbers. Next up, Van Jefferson. It's not that I expected Van Jefferson to thrive in week 1. I didn't really, and he certainly wasn't someone that I was comfortable starting. There were about 10,000 things that could go wrong for the Rams, and a big day from Jefferson in his new wide receiver run role with Cooper Kupp out just probably wasn't going to happen. But that scenario didn't actually happen because the Rams thrived. Matt Stafford threw for over 300 yards, the Rams demolished the Seahawks 30-13, and Van Jefferson showed us that he simply cannot and will not be the wide receiver 1 of this offense. Instead, we saw rookie Puka Nacua ascend to glory with 10 receptions on 15 targets for 119 yards, and that wasn't all. Tutu Atwell also had himself a day with 6 receptions on 8 targets for 119 yards. And then there was Van Jefferson with 4 receptions on 5 targets for 24 yards. And here's the rough part. Jefferson was on the field more than any other pass catcher. There was no underlying issue here. Jefferson's capabilities just don't translate to volume. We are now in year 4 for Van Jefferson. And the best he's given us is a wide receiver 36 finish in 2021. I can't advise even flexing Jefferson in most leagues. You can move on. Next up, Allen Lazard. Unlike our first 2 players, the reason we are cutting Allen Lazard really has nothing to do with him. Sadly, Aaron Rodgers is out for the season with a torn Achilles, and for that reason, there's really no point in rostering any pass catcher beyond Garrett Wilson. Lazard is still the wide receiver 2 in the Jets offense. That is very clear. But rostering the wide receiver 2 for Zach Wilson is just poor practice. It's possible Wilson could improve and grow over the course of the season and have enough pass volume to support more than one wide receiver, but the evidence from 2022 says it's highly unlikely. And on Monday night, Wilson completed 14 passes with 1 touchdown to Garrett Wilson and 1 interception. Most weeks, that might be the best case scenario. So this one is short and sweet. The volume won't be there for Lazard. You can cut him. Next up, Gerald Everett. The last player in deep leagues we can cut is pretty simple. The tight end position was on the struggle bus last week. The top options let us down for the most part, and dark horse options emerged from the background. Quite frankly, I would rather have any of the dark horse candidates over Gerald Everett. Guys like Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst, Luke Musgrave all stepped up as the tight end 1 on their offense. Meanwhile, Gerald Everett is splitting time with Donald Parham. And that's not new. We saw it last season, but Parham dealt with injuries that consistently kept him off the field. I don't think this usage is an anomaly. I believe they will continue to split time, making Everett a very low volume option. Moving on to players to cut in shallow leagues of 10 teams or less. First up, Deion Jackson. Indianapolis put up a decent fight in Anthony Richardson's first outing, and there were some good takeaways from that game. Richardson did well through the air and is a constant threat on the ground. In theory, the run game should have been decent. In theory. Instead, Deion Jackson had 13 carries for 14 yards and 5 receptions for just 14 yards and 2 fumbles. You could not have asked for a worse outing. The fact that he's facing Houston's run defense and Evan Hull is going on IR is the only thing that it remotely saves Jackson. Zach Moss was close to returning last week. If he returns this week, it is safe to assume he falls into the RB1 role immediately. Again, lack of healthy backs is the only thing keeping Jackson afloat. If Zach Moss can't suit up or he's limited, Jackson is the default option. But even with the good matchup, can you really confidently flex him in shallow leagues? You'll more than likely have more trustworthy options on your bench. And if you're not starting him this week, you'll be dropping him as soon as Moss assumes the RB1 role. The time limit is short. If you are trying to decide on someone to cut from your team, Jackson is a good candidate. Next up, Juju Smith-Schuster. I am holding on in deep leagues because Juju is one of those guys that just always gets some level of targets. So in a 14-team league, there's definitely some value of having a plug-in guy that you know can get you some points. But in a shallow league, a low-volume plug-in play is just really not that valuable. Because you can grab a plug-and-play piece off of waivers every single week. You don't want your bench to have a bunch of these guys. You want your bench to have high upside players that have the potential to hit big. Juju doesn't have that potential. This isn't even about the fact that Kendrick Bourne had the highest snap count, 11 targets and 2 touchdowns. It's that Juju himself just doesn't have that high upside capability. Less than 10 fantasy points in a game where Mac Jones had a very strong outing just isn't inspiring. Devontae Parker will be back at some point, and rookies Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte appeared to be legitimate competition for Juju. Next up, Sky Moore. This one pains me. I truly believe that Sky Moore could step into a more prominent role this season. And it could still happen. He's obviously a mainstay on the field. He had the highest snap count of any Chiefs receiver this week. But the fact that he couldn't push himself into a more prominent role in terms of targets with Travis Kelce out is very concerning. I went back and forth on this all week. Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney, one of them is a drop candidate. They clearly can't both be productive here. And Toney is the one that I feel like I just can't trust. And after a dreadful performance, the one that he gave this week, you would think the Chiefs would want to pivot away from him. But Andy Reid has been very vocal that he's not actually mad at Kadarius Toney for the 5,000 mistakes that he made on Thursday. Reid said that it's actually his own fault. They'll continue going back to Kadarius Toney, so the opportunity is there, but that opportunity might just not exist for Sky Moore. And finally, Jerick McKinnon. To wrap things up, we will talk about one more Chief. I am not remotely shocked at the lack of usage from Jerick McKinnon in week 1. McKinnon played 31% of snaps and had just 1 reception on 2 targets for 10 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire played less, but he had more touches with 6 carries for 22 yards and 1 reception for 7 yards. And Isaiah Pacheco led the way with 8 carries for 23 yards and 4 receptions for 31 yards. It's not that I don't think that McKinnon is a critical part of this offense. It's that he is 31. And if the Chiefs can keep his usage low early on and then ramp him up mid-season for their playoff run, it's probably a more effective strategy for load management with him. And if Pacheco is actually reliable on third downs, as he showed, they can execute the strategy. If you need a roster spot, drop McKinnon now, and just remember to circle back to him mid-season. In shallow leagues, you can afford to do this. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to Fantasy Pros. And remember, if you want a chance to win a signed Tyreek Hill Miami Dolphins jersey courtesy of bettingpros.com, your place to start betting smarter and not harder, you need to subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Comment below on this video and that's it. We will be announcing the winner right here on the channel, so make sure you turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize.